We are joined now by Jeremy Werner for the Illini Inquirer, and you've been following Illini basketball throughout this entire season as they are about to make their fifth straight NCAA tournament. I know Brad Underwood would say it should be their sixth straight, but following this team, knowing about them, what do you like about their chances, or maybe don't like about their chances heading into this tournament?
Well, for once, I think Illinois fans can't complain about their draw.
Yeah.
Obviously playing high major teams who've already played a game, that's not ideal, but Texas and Xavier barely got into the tournament here, right? So I do feel like getting a 6 seed was a good thing for Illinois. Some people thought they could be a 7 seed. And then to be honest with you, if they're able to get through their first game, which with this team, you can't count your chickens before they hatch, but if they get through their first game, I think Kentucky, though very good, in Mark Pope's first year, they're a little banged up. Lamont Butler's been injured. Jackson Robinson, their second leading scorer, is out for the season with an injury. And they just play a style that Illinois plays better against. They're not this big physical team, the Marylands of the world, the Dukes of the world that Illinois has really struggled with. They're a team that can score in Kentucky, but they like to push the pace, and they're not that great defensively. Illinois likes to play that way. So I think the draw is good. But as you know, Cassie, um, we'll see what side of the bed the Illini wake up on that day, right? Like that is the most important thing because this team's been really schizophrenic throughout the last year. And obviously they've dealt with injuries and illness, but even over the last 5 weeks, as they've been healthier, they have 3 wins over high major teams by 20 plus points. They have 3 losses to high major teams by 20 plus points. So it's just been this roller coaster with this team, but they are talented. What they do lack is experience in the NCAA tournament. They have 3 players who have played NCAA tournament games, a combined 138 minutes in the NCAA tournament. When they step on that stage, it's a different feeling. The butterflies are different. And for a team that really relies on good starts to games, I'm interested to see how they handle it against a team in Texas or Xavier who has played an NCAA tournament game already.
Yeah, you kind of answered one of the questions that I feel like I get asked a lot. They're like, "Oh, I'm an Illini alum." They're like, "What do you think about the Illini in the tournament?" And it's like you just never know. They always say Brad Underwood is lethal in March, but then it could also be the exact opposite way, where yeah, maybe they make it to the second weekend. I could also see them being a first weekend exit. And you mentioned the youth. How does Brad Underwood prepare them mentally for what they're about to experience for a lot of them the first time?
Yeah, I asked him that exact question, Cassie, because I do think like, Casper Siakishonis is a lottery pick. Will Riley's a one and done. Illinois has never had one and dones,
Mhm.
let alone two on the same team. They're very talented, but they're freshmen. Will just turned 19. Casper's is still 18 years old, which people forget. And obviously they're both going different ways, right? Will has played come on strong here, while Casper's has had his worst month of basketball. But Tomislav Visic might be 21. He's never played in an NCAA tournament game. Merez Johnson Jr. out of the Chicago area has never played an NCAA tournament game and is just coming back from injury. So I asked him that, and he said, you got to focus on your preparation and you got to know the urgency of the end. And he said they handled that well against Iowa, but they didn't turn around and handle that well against Maryland. They were feeling too good about themselves. So I think they'll be amped up for this first game, right? How can you not be? But how do you handle the turnaround in the next game to Kentucky? And that's where you do have to rely on Kylan Boswell, who has played in 4 NCAA tournament games and has been on the side of bad loss. He was on the number 2 seed Arizona when they lost to 15 seed Princeton. Trey White has played 1 NCAA tournament game, and then Draven Gibbs Allhorn has played on the team last year, the only returner who's playing for this team. And Ty Rodgers, who played in the Chicago area his final year, he's still in this locker room, but not playing. So it's definitely a concern for this team of how they'll react in that moment because they're the third least experienced team that has made the NCAA tournament here.
Yeah, you mentioned Kentucky already, so I feel like you're like, all right, they're going to make it past this first game, whether it's Xavier or Texas. But is there any fear with, say, Texas wins that game, they're SEC and they've really come on strong, really in the SEC tournament, they looked like a different team, that maybe that is the strongest conference and maybe that is the reason why they're in one of those first 4 games and they could be a dark horse?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Texas is a way more talented team than Xavier. They're very different teams. Texas is big, physical. They're really underachieving, though. At 19 and 15, they've lost 9 of their last 14. As you said, Cassie, they're playing in the SEC. So that probably has a lot to do with it. They've lost a lot of close games. but they have a lottery pick in Trey Johnson, potentially a top five pick. They have two big guys in Arthur Kaluma and Caden Shedrick, who are legitimate forces that are big and physical. Illinois struggled with those kind of teams, but they're not that well coached. And that is why Rodney Terry has been on the hot seat. Then on the flip side of Xavier, really good offensive team, not that imposing defensively. Texas is a flip of that, but they're coached by Sean Miller, who is a very good coach. I know he hasn't been to a Final Four yet, but has been won a lot of NCAA tournament games, while Xavier is playing really well to end the season. So it's kind of pick your poison of which team you want, but both teams are flawed. I think stylistically and talent-wise, Texas is a little scarier. Xavier kind of fits more what Illinois wants stylistically, but I think they'll be better prepared with a better game plan. So I think Illinois should be favored in either of those games, but it's going to come down to how does Illinois play? Really, it could come down to this easy. It's been this way all year, Cassie. If Illinois makes 11 threes, they're winning this game. If they don't shoot well, they're not winning. That's just what this team comes down to. Are they making three-pointers that day? Of course, do they take quality ones? That's a big question, but they got to have that energy and bite from the start, and then they just got to make shots and be confident.
If they're not hot from three, which we've seen happen this season, do you think they have the ability, knowing the circumstances of the tournament, to make in-game adjustments?
Well, that's the big question. Do they have another way to win? I think they do against Xavier. Against Xavier, I do think they can get to the rim, finish. Kylan Boswell, Trey White, Will Riley have a size advantage over a lot of those guards. Merez Johnson Jr., Tomislav Ivisic, I think would have a size advantage. And Tomislav really can sit in that high post and pick you apart with guys back cutting and getting to the rim. We saw that against Iowa. So if you're not shooting well, I'd rather play Xavier. But against Texas, a big physical team with rim protectors, they're going to have to shoot well. But they also got to attack the basket to get better looks. So it's different based on whatever team you draw in that first round.
You mentioned good coaches. I think Rick Pitino is like the ultimate example of having a good coach and the advantage that has for a team come March. With Brad Underwood, though, we all saw what happened against Duke on national television at Madison Square Garden, but they really responded after that game, winning four straight. So count out what happened in the last game of the Big Ten tournament. How did you see Underwood manage and navigate what happened against Duke and be able to get his team back in shape when it really mattered down the stretch?
I don't think there's any debating Brad Underwood is a very good coach,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he and Matt Painter are tied for the lead in conference wins over the last 6 years and the first or second best conference in the country. So he's clearly a good coach, clearly gets good talent, and clearly gets a lot out of them over the last 6 years. I do think there's a conversation to be had about in a game when something happens, how good is he at that? But he has made adjustments late in this season. Defensively, they're starting to be a little bit more versatile, hedging ball screens, just showing some defensive looks, being a little bit more aggressive. But it's still just not a very good defensive team because they're built for offense. Offensively, they have started to play more through Tomislav Ivisic, kind of as this point center at the top of the key, kind of picking you apart. They're cutting better, getting better looks at the rim, and getting better looks from three. If you would ask me before the Maryland game how I feel about this team, I think a lot of people would say they're hitting their stride. Maryland's a terrible matchup, but Texas kind of has some flavors of that. So I still think it's a team that is relying on making jump shots. That is who they are. That is what they were built to be. They were built to be an offensive team. They're not the most athletic team, but they are a big team. But they rely on offense. That's why you probably want to get into a bracket with shootouts, and that's why an Xavier Kentucky kind of path could be advantageous for Illinois, while Texas could be a little bit more of a murky matchup for them, even though Texas isn't playing very great ball right now. So, yeah, Underwood, I think, got a lot off his back last year with the Elite Eight run. Can
Yeah.
he win in the NCAA tournament? Obviously, after that Loyola loss with Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Coburn in 2021. But if he gets to another Sweet 16 with this group, I do think there wouldn't be a lot of talk about can Brad Underwood win in the NCAA tournament because back-to-back weekends in the Sweet 16 or back-to-back years in the Sweet 16. Illinois hasn't done that since Darren and Dee were here.
Merez Johnson Jr., a lot of interest up here for him, Thornton Township High School. And defensively speaking, you mentioned Illinois being a big offensive team, but what does he bring as a freshman defensively as he's now back and healthy?
Just size and physicality, tenaciousness. He's just one of those players that Illinois doesn't have otherwise. When he's out, they just aren't a physical team. when he's in the game, you have somebody who can get in there, do the dirty work, be that junkyard dog. And that's what's great. If there's a silver lining of him being the one who got hurt at the end of the year, it's just he doesn't have the ball in his hands a lot, right? Like he's not a guy that needs to get into a rhythm. He's just a guy who plays hard, runs, defends, and gets physical. And he's one of the best rebounders in the country by percentages. So he just gives them another flavor and just a versatility that if they need to go big and physical against Texas, they got a 7-footer in Tomislav Visic who's skilled and can provide some rim protection, but then they just have a physical guy, Merez Johnson Jr., who can provide rim protection, really get after the glass and help you win the rebound battle and steal some of those extra possessions that become really, really important. And he's a guy who can finish around the rim. Trey White, Will Riley are starting to do that better. Colin Boswell is doing that better. But Merez Johnson, just grab a rebound and dunk it. He's capable of doing that. So just gives them something they don't have otherwise.
Jeremy, I know you're a basketball fan in general, so I'm guessing you've filled out a bracket already.
I filled out one last night. I was so focused on all of this, but I did fill out a gut feel bracket by the end of the night. Yeah.
All right, so gut feel, how far do you have the Illini going, and who do you have winning?
See, here's the problem. I can see them losing their first game or going to the
I
Sweet
know.
16. It's
I
weird
have
because
them in the Elite Eight. That's so
I feel like
biased.
if they win their first game, they would win two. But will they only win one? I just don't know if that's going to be the case for them. It's hard to be too confident in them, right? Because they're really inconsistent. So picking them to get out of the first weekend is a leap of faith. I think more likely than not they will be done in the first weekend just because can they string two wins together against very good teams? They did it last month against Michigan and Purdue, and that was a big step. But to follow it up with an uncompetitive game like Maryland was really disappointing. And I'm just concerned about the NCAA tournament experience, but I do think they got a good draw. So my gut feel was, yeah, I had them through. To answer your question, do I feel good about it? No, not
So
with
you,
this.
so you have them then losing to Tennessee in the Sweet 16. You don't think they
Which
can
Which
back
Illinois,
them?
I love Tennessee. That's a great team. I saw them up close, but
Yeah.
Jackson Lanier, Zakai Ziegler were both in foul trouble in that game. But yeah, I mean, Illinois only lost by 2 on a buzzer beater in that game. So they are capable of making a run. It's just a big leap of faith for an inconsistent team.
Who do you have winning it all?
I have Duke with Cooper Flag back. I just think they're the most talented physical team. I think John Shire's done an unbelievable job. Maybe it's chalky to pick Duke, but it just got a feel of that Anthony Davis Kentucky team from 2012, where yes, they're young, but I just think they're so much more physically imposing. And despite having a bunch of freshmen, they're not normal freshmen. Malawatch is a lottery pick. Con Knipple is a lottery pick. And then they have some really good guards as well that give them some veterans, give them a lot of sharp shooting. So I just think it's the best roster in college basketball, and it gives me some UConn vibes to them too.
All right, Jeremy Werner, we appreciate your time. Have fun in Milwaukee. Should be a huge Illini crowd. They got the luck of the draw with location. So we'll see what happens. As you mentioned, they're kind of a wild card when it comes to the NCAA tournament. So we'll see if they make it past the first weekend. But we appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.